Welcome back, guys, to episode 45. Today we have the lovely Emm Page, who's a financial advisor and the founder of Lumaire Wealth. After a decade of industry experience, Lumaire Wealth was established to help lead the next generation down the path of financial planning and education. She specializes in professional financial advice in association with helping the modern day family, single parents, millennials, and boss ladies alike. Lumaire understands that the social norm of the quote unquote everyday household has changed, therefore, the advice that's out there needs to as well. Emm has been working in the field since she was 21 years old and was inspired to create a service with the female in mind, with the financial industry itself being male dominated. Emm, being a single mum herself, she understands the importance of women not only talking about money, but the importance of investing it and creating multiple streams of income. We have some good old soul chats in this episode about money, investing, savings, super, and so much more. For those of you who are wanting to become more financially literate and savvy, this is a no BS, no jargon episode where we break down things for you that's super simple so that you can be empowered on all the financial lingo that gets thrown around out there. You can find all of her details, such as her website and her Instagrams, in the show notes below. And if you'd love to watch this live, we have this episode on YouTube. Emm actually flew up to the Gold Coast and sat in our living room for this one. You can also check out our website at www.babestalkingbusiness.com or our Instagram at babestalkingbusiness, where we have loads of information, including our free download, our side hustle guide that you can get into your hot little hands today. It's a 40-page guide where we help you not only think about your bright idea and your business, but we share really interesting information with you that you really want to be aware about if you're in business or want to be in business. Plus, we give you 53 different ideas on how you can start making an income today, right away, with a business on the side. One last thing, we just want to let you know we are so grateful for you. Please give us a 5-star review. Every week on Instagram, we do a shout out of the week. Make sure if you leave us a 5-star review that you leave your Instagram handle so we can tag you and share you with our family. So without further ado, we're so excited for you to hear from this lovely lady, Emm.
So this week we have beautiful Emm on the show. And I'm so excited. Okay, I think you guys have heard me talk about in previous weeks how I wanted to have someone on the show talk about money. Like Shannon and I love money. And I think especially as women, there's like, women are intimidated to talk about it. It's like, it's a dirty word. They don't know what to ask. They're scared they're going to sound silly by talking about it. So I thought, let's just create a safe space to delve in, because you're obviously a financial advisor. And maybe talk a little bit more about your story and how you even got into that, because we know that's a male-dominated industry as well.
Absolutely.
So should we rewind and start where it all started? Because I think you've been in the industry for 10 years now.
Financial services 10, and then I started in accounting from 13. So, yeah.
What?
Yeah. I guess that's the nature of having a dad that had an accounting practice. So I didn't really want to do that. I think I fought it tooth and nail in the beginning, and I was like, no, I'm going to get a job at McDonald's, which I eventually did, but I realised getting paid McDonald's wage versus accounting wage was probably a little bit different. And you could get more bang for your buck and better experience. So
How amazing.
Yeah, so that was fun. I think from that point I left school and I had made the opinion of never wanting to go back into a corporate role. I was no 9 to 5 for me. I want to do something fun, as you do when you sort of leave school. You're a bit up in the air. And then I think I started studying business just because I had to do something and I wasn't sure what that was. You know, when you leave like HSC, it's like you must make a decision about life. Too young, in my opinion. You're way too young to make big decisions like that. So I went the opposite way and got a hairdressing apprenticeship.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I didn't even finish my business. I was doing a diploma at the time. I had one assignment due. So this is how stupid and naive I was in the beginning. I won't submit that last assessment. I've got this hairdressing apprenticeship now. I'm going to be killing it. But yeah, full-time work, good money. I think it was like $250 a week. Anyway, full time. So then I was allergic to everything. So I then had to just kind of sit and go, well, what happens next? I think I stayed in more of like a salon admin role for up to 12 months whilst I started studying financial planning, and then I haven't looked back since. So yeah, that's where it all kind of came from. And unfortunately, to my own, I don't even know what I'd refer to it as. Now I just laugh because it's really funny that the one thing that I promised myself I'd never do, here I am.
And owning it, like really good at it.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, you mentioned before that there's not many females. So I remember getting my first traineeship, and as part of the interview, and it's really funny, it's the company that I contract to now, the guy through Sufficient Funds, James, he was like, oh, how do you feel you'll be the only female in the whole national company doing what you do? And I was like, wow, is that really what it's going to be like? Yeah, you might have to go to clients' houses a little bit late at night. It might be dark. Do you really think you're going to be comfortable with that? And yeah, it's been pretty rewarding. I feel like there's always a feminine touch that you can throw on to that kind of thing around advice, which is really nice.
That is cool.
Yeah.
Well, they say that the female energy of the house is the person who should be looking after the funds. Where did I hear that? I think my coach told me that.
Mills.
Yeah.
They always say that.
So that's interesting.
Comes from a different place, that's for sure.
Yeah. And so I know when we were chatting, we're talking about the importance, especially because it is such a male-dominated industry, for women who maybe are wanting to look into wealth creation or wanting to learn a bit more about money, have a woman wealth advisor, someone who can really understand them. Without your education, I don't know, or even from your experience, do you find many women are engaging with wealth advisors? They're kind of leaving it up to men to do.
It's such a weird thing. I feel like people only ever start looking for a financial planner primarily when something's gone significantly wrong. Maybe not to them, but maybe to someone close to them. And you find a lot of women just don't tend to seek it independently until maybe they've gone through a separation and they really can't manage it. Maybe their husband was the breadwinner. They might have been bringing up the children and put aside their career, or maybe just wasn't the path that they'd chosen to follow. And it's really daunting to them. It's scary. Maybe they don't feel like they've achieved enough. So going and disclosing their financial affairs to someone seems a little bit scary, and they might be judged. And I think finances in general are pretty stressful, and a lot of people learn to just shut it out because otherwise you start losing sleep and it just creates bigger problems. But yeah, I think being a female, I think primarily now I'm starting to focus on the female empowerment. It's really crazy how much females are starting to come out of the woodwork and now and acknowledging how nice it is to find a female to offer a service, which is, it's only something I've noticed in maybe the last 2-3 years. Before that, it was not really a thing.
It's crazy, and I don't know if I talk on behalf of some of you guys who are tuning in, but until we started our business, I kind of got into the personal development world. I read a book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, and then I read his wife's book, Rich Woman by Kim Kiyosaki, and that just opened me up to the world and the statistics of why it's so important for women to not only feel comfortable to talk about money, but to understand how to manage money and how to invest money. And I know we're talking briefly about the statistics before, and like you just mentioned, like 1 in 2 marriages these days end in divorce. And if people find it really fun, because like you said, people don't really start talking about money or investing until something goes wrong. So it's funny to have us chicks who we're in our early 20s when we started business talking about having second streams of income and having financial security when we're embarking on a marriage and all these beautiful things. But I think it's important at this age, because that's where you can make the most difference, to set yourself up for security and have these conversations. And you don't go into a marriage thinking you're going to end up in divorce, but one in 2 do. And then what most of us do, we end up having kids. Then we go home, we're the homemaker, and then we're trusting our partners, investing and dealing with finances. And when shit goes heads up, you've got no idea where your money's gone. You don't know how to manage it. And in most circumstances, women end up being the sole provider for their kids anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Or they stay in relationships because they have no other way.
Yeah.
You have no idea the number of calls I've had with women who have called and they're wanting help, but it's primarily around, okay, well, I'm wanting to leave. I'm really wanting to leave, but I'm really worried. It's the financial part. Like, I don't think I can do it. I don't have enough money. How am I going to support the children? What am I going to do? And they're stuck in such this fear space, and I never hear from them again.
Yeah.
And you just know that they've just made the decision that that's just the path that they're on, and they potentially might seek someone else out later, and you really hope that they do. But the reality is they end up staying until maybe the kids have grown up and just can't take it anymore.
Yeah, I think we're definitely moving into a time where women are starting to see that they need to be in charge of their wealth and their savings and their money, and they need to know what they're doing with it. I think it's a really great time for women. And I know for me personally, and I know you, Loz, as well, like we are so in charge of our finances, and I'm like, I'm not going to let anyone else control this because I want to know where every cent is going, and so many like great principles out there to teach women, but I think it's still such a weird topic to talk about. And
there's a stigma around it, and I feel like a lot of women are too embarrassed to talk about because they feel like they don't know enough, and they at the risk of sounding silly. But I think even when we embarked in our business with Babes in Business, I remember thinking like, I want to create an income or a business that I will always have my own income. Like no matter what happens, if I have kids, if I'm not working, I'll never be in a position where I'm relying on a man. Not because I don't have an issue with relying on a man, but I never want to be stuck in a position where I'm there because I need to be, not because I don't want to be. So I'd love to maybe ask you, like, let's say for women who are thinking ahead, right? Women who get this, maybe they're in their 20s, nothing bad's happened yet, they're not in crisis mode yet. And you know that saying, dig the well before you're thirsty, like setting themselves up for security.
Yes, I love that.
And then knowing, okay, well, I want to be a bit smarter with my money. What are some tips that you would give for women who maybe haven't done much with their wealth before, or they're kind of wanting to start looking into investing? Like, what would you say for people who are just kind of starting out and don't know very much about it?
Oh my goodness. So I love podcasts, and it's funny because we're talking about it on a podcast, but the amount of knowledge that's shared within 60 minutes of a financial podcast in particular can teach you so many things, or just change the way you think about it. That's always a good start, particularly if you're just not really sure if it's for you. The best thing I can ever tell someone, and I think it's one of the primary misconceptions, is you don't have to have money to start. It's as simple as you could be putting $2 or $3, $5, any of your spare change basically aside, and over time that's going to compound and build over time, and suddenly by the time that you may be 30 or looking to get married or buy your first home, you haven't really worked any harder for it. It's just about being a little bit smarter about where you've directed it and getting the money to really start to work for you in a much more positive way. So speaking with a financial advisor is awesome. I think it comes down to if you're looking at investing, you really need to sort of understand your risk tolerance. That's huge. I think people instantly assume that all investments are high risk, which is not necessarily the case. There's so many different alternatives out there which can be suitable to anyone, and also your time frame. So you're not going to throw all of your, say for instance, you went into the casino, you're not going to put all of your money on I don't know much about gambling, but a black two, for instance, and hope for the best, and think that you're going to make all your money back straight away. It's more about knowing what your time frames are. Do you have the time aside to be able to tolerate the market fluctuations? If your investment goes down a little bit over the duration of the investment, has it still grown in value? But also what you intend to do with the money that you're investing too. So if you're looking to buy a house, but it may not be for maybe 5-10 years because you're starting really, really young, then you're going to invest quite differently to where you might be wanting to buy a house in the next 6 to 12 months, for instance. So that's, I reckon, always speaking to a planner around just understanding that's really great.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate because I know the Shani 10 years ago, if I was listening to a podcast episode like this, I'd be like, what? What did you just say? What's risk tolerance? Like, what is all this stuff? So let's break it down so it's really easy. From my understanding, when you invest, there are 3 different types of things you can invest in, like low risk, medium risk, high risk. And according to how would you tell someone, or what would you say to someone if they had some savings that they wanted to invest? Like, would you start at the low risk and then work your way up?
I think it's more about even taking it a step back from that as what you're investing for. I think before you even start looking into investment options, before you're starting to address your risk tolerance, you need to think, okay, what's my why? Why am I doing this? Is it to just basically generate a second income stream for myself in the long term? Do I want to be able to take a few hours off a week and then still have the same level of income? That type of thing, and assess that first. Then I'd probably have a look at, okay, so how much have I got? Am I putting a large sum of money away, and what's going to happen to me if this falls by 10% in maybe year one? And then basically, depending on what that goal, if it's to buy a house and you're doing it 12 months, you're probably not going to go throw everything in a high risk option, because if I was to draw it up on a scale, which I normally would, you've got a graph, and just imagine like all of this volatility. It's just like a giant scribble going. There's lots of peaks and troughs in there, and they're a lot more frequent to something that even leaving money in a bank is basically considering investing. Yeah. You've also got the option that you could lose it because GFC, banks go under, you technically can't get your money out. Yeah. So it's about really having a big look inside yourself and saying, okay, so I might have $5,000, I might have $200. If that was to be lost and I've worked really hard for that amount of money, how would I feel?
The emotion,
versus what's the outcome that I'm hoping to achieve? And then you can start to create maybe a plan or better understanding of whether you're really happy to play it like it's a gamble, or you want to be a little bit more conservative and go towards the more beginner scale. And it's also always good to kind of dip your toe in first.
I see. I have a really bad personality where I go into the casino and I'm like, all on red. And then my husband's like the very reserved, like, don't be emotional.
Stop.
So, yes. But from my understanding, so a low risk investment would generally take a little bit longer to make a profit on, because if you guys are watching on YouTube, it sort of like does something like this, whereas something like medium to high risk, there is that volatility, and so you win heaps but then you lose heaps, and it's sort of like all over the place. So what are some really cool things that people can invest in? Like, what's out there? What are the options?
So there's so many. So as I mentioned just a minute ago, cash is an investment. So if you're wanting to buy a house maybe in 6 months' time, whether you'd want any more exposure to that, I don't know. But you've got things like interest savings accounts, which might not necessarily be great in the current climate. Cash isn't worth too much. You have bonds, fixed interest, those kind of situations where it's guaranteed a smaller amount of percentage and you're investing back in the bank so they can go lend money and so on and so forth. And then more commonly, you've got your shares, which people know about, property and managed funds. And they're going to be a little bit more aggressive and come with different, I guess, structures. So understanding property, brick and mortar. And then you got stocks, so you're buying like a little parcel of a big company and hoping for the best. Or a managed fund is going to give you opportunity to invest in maybe a little bit of property and also some companies to get some stocks in, and you're getting a real diversified portfolio. And the benefit of doing something like that might give you an option to not feel like you need to go in and really set on one particular investment, and more like diversifying it and not putting all your eggs in one basket. So there's lots.
It's I don't know about you guys, but maybe I talk on behalf of myself when I say this, but I think there's also a generational thing too. Like, I know, like I said, I don't know if it's just my socioeconomic background or where I've grown up, but it was kind of groomed, or what I get passed down from parents and elders is like invest in property. And then things, I think their generation, a lot of them in that generation did that. And obviously times are changing, the market's changing. If you're somebody who, and everyone's going to give an opinion, everyone's giving an opinion on what you should invest in, but if you're somebody who wants to be like, all right, well, I know I want to invest, I'm going to go seek some advice from a financial advisor, I'm going to educate myself by listening to some podcasts. Is there any books or anything that you would recommend? Like, how can someone make a good decision for them, whether they should be investing in market, like in property, in shares? Like, how do you make that decision for you, and where do you start in doing that?
I see it's a bit tricky. From my perspective, I'd go speak to like fund managers and talk about that from a more like detailed level. I mean, there's cool things that you can Google. You can go on and literally Google, who's a good one? Morningstar, and just jump on their general website, and they'll give you a daily market update. It's a little bit, if you're not interested, it's going to probably put you to sleep, let's be honest, but it's a really good way to start to get a good feel of how it all works and the terminology, and get yourself really accustomed to what's to be expected. And then if you've got questions, pick up the phone, call an advisor. Often or not, they're happy to speak to you and not charge you a fee. So there's so much you can do. Podcasts are really good. My Millennial Money, She's on the Money. There's so many different things around that. One thing that does make me irk is, and I hate to say it, but the Barefoot Investor.
I was going to say, what's your thing? I love him.
Let's talk about it. Why? I want to know why.
I'm not saying that his book does great things in terms of educating people more than what they've currently got, because people are so undereducated. And the one additional thing is why we're not educated about it in school, but I don't know.
I agree. This should be like part of the curriculum.
You know what? There'd be so many problems solved by just putting it in part of the curriculum. Just like credit card debt. If you knew about interest and how it worked, then people just wouldn't get into these horrible positions when they get out of school whilst trying to study and maybe only work part-time or casually. But yeah, back to Barefoot Investor. I just think it's really scary when you go and start naming products and telling people what to do when you don't know their personal situation. It's extremely risky, and even in what I do, for every recommendation that I make as a planner, I have to go and compare it to 2 or 3 other alternatives before I can base an opinion on where I think somebody should put their money. And the fact that he instantly goes in there and tells people to roll it into one set super fund, and that set super fund is an industry fund, and that may not generally be in the best interest.
Everyone.
Oh goodness, no. And not ragging on industry funds either. There's definitely a time and place where they are great, but it's not everyone. And there's different tax structures that come alongside that. Not to mention the instant loss of personal insurances that come by rolling out a super fund without even taking that into consideration. It instantly removes all insurance. And if someone is of poor health, those insurances can't be replaced. So your income protection, your life insurance, your trauma insurance, if all the things that are going to help you safeguard your livelihood if you have an accident or become sick, or your family member becomes sick. And it's just really scary. But in saying that, his cash flow things I'm a massive fan of. So
I was going to say, it's probably one of the books in the last 3 years that's really helped me, because I was that person who was like, I want money, like I want the freedom, but it all sounds really scary. And I just like, oh, Dan, tell me what that means. And Mum and Dad worked that out and explained it to me afterwards, rather than just taking ownership, being like, well, you know what, this is my future. And how can I expect somebody to manage my own money if I'm not going to manage it and be smart with it? So I made it my thing over the last 2 years. I've read so many books, and some have been very boring. I've read a lot about stocks, which are very boring for me. But I wanted to be educated on it. And I think Barefoot Investor is probably the best book that I read that just made it simplified for somebody who's wanting to start and be a bit more educated on like how to save, how to make sure you've got your money for daily living, how to save for a rainy day, the idea of how to pay off debt or a mortgage or credit card debt, or the importance of super. I think a lot of people don't realize why they need super, and especially with the market the way it's going. Like, we're not going to have pensions by the time we need it, so you're going to have to need your own money to fall back on.
And that's when it comes so heavily back into investing. We can't rely on super to fund our income stream when we retire. And to be honest, if you relied on that solely without any other form of external investing, you're probably not going to survive. And it means that you're going to, today people are going back to rely on the government pension, but we can't guarantee for our generation that that's going to be there.
Yeah.
We've gone through the baby boomers. The reason that we've got super in the first place was because our economy couldn't fund the increasing aging population. So we're really lucky that we've been forced into having superannuation from the start of our working career. But there's so many different things you need to look outside of that, or even just using super and how you invest within your super.
Yeah.
Even just starting there is a really great way to your toe in the water as well.
I know for me, I started working when I was 14, and you automatically get a super, and I always used to be like, that's so annoying. Why can't I access that money? And I didn't know what super was. And then as I got older, I guess I just had a million different super funds because I had so many jobs through my teenage years. And then it wasn't until my mid-20s where, I don't know, I think I read somewhere or someone told me you can roll them all into one, and I did that. And then I still didn't know what super was. I just felt like it was me getting scammed and like someone was holding my money. And then I remember having a conversation with someone who was like, do you know where your funds are invested from the super that you're a part of? And I was like, wait, what? I thought the people who took my super money just like, I didn't know they were investing my money in different things, and I didn't know that like a GFC would do something to my super. Like, it just blew my mind. And I think about how many people out there still don't understand how super works, and do they even know where their super funds are being invested in, and are they in low risk investments? Are they in high risk investments? Like, I think that's something we really need to get out there as well, because I didn't know that until very, very late into my 20s.
It's huge. I sit with people all the time, and just by spreading your investment into over 7 different funds has such a huge long-term effect on your overall capital. It's just like, for instance, say you've got a pool of money and you're just throwing $1 here and $1 there and maybe $2 over here, or you could leave it all here and it's a nice little big pot of gold, basically. And it's so I see, one, people don't understand it, but 2, they also leave it in these more commonly under-invested portfolios, which aren't producing the level of return that they need over the long term of their working career. So they're missing out on already something that's going to be quite limiting for their retirement, but they're missing all the upscale and potential downscale too, but all of that opportunity to boost their retirement capital, resulting in this high level of mental blank. But this inefficiency of people being able to support themselves in retirement, and for women in particular too, they're outliving men, and they haven't always had the long-term working careers as us millennials have. We're more inclined to have careers and work a lot longer, but they don't have the super behind them. They haven't had a partner who's contributed into super for them. When their husband dies, they probably may have already depleted his super fund. So then what happens to them once that they've got to live a particular longer period? Is it up to the children to support the difference? We all hear how difficult it is to rely on the age pension, and how hard it is, like the switching off power, not using power, like it's crazy. And my mum's a pensioner and I see it too. It's not enjoyable. No. Absolutely not enjoyable at all. Yeah.
And that's what kind of comes back to that thing, like digging the well before you're thirsty. Like it's up to making decisions now, earlier in life, where you're not in a risk situation, or you're not in a trauma situation, you're not in a crisis, where you can set yourself up so you have multiple income streams, you have security, so when you can be a mum and you can enjoy having time off, you can have extra in your super, you've got things there if shit goes wrong. I'd love for you to talk into, do you think it's important for women to have a second income, or do you think women just have a job? Like, what's your stance on all that?
Oh, I think it's always important to consider other options. We've got this society now and this culture that we must live a certain way, right? So working yourself to the bone, you can only work so many hours of the day, which are going to give you standard salary. How are we going to continue to fund these increasingly expensive lifestyles, or even just the cost of living is increasing over time? With the inflation doesn't necessarily keep up with it. So how are we going to continue to meet the everyday needs? Well, a common thing that you hear now, everyone's talking about the side hustle. I consider investing a side hustle on steroids, really. And it's basically not having something that you need to physically exert yourself for. It's kind of maximizing what you've already got and just getting to work equally as hard for you in return. And that could be, it might not be something that you're wanting to draw a passive income from yourself to top up your current income stream, but it could be to generate capital. So once you do want to have kids and you want to have an extended period off on maternity leave, then maybe you can draw down on that investment or draw an income stream that's going to support you the same level of income that you may have working, and then you're not forced to go back to work. I got made redundant 5 or 6 years ago now, and I hadn't travelled. I went straight into the working career and just didn't stop. Whilst I was away, I met my daughter's father and I came back pregnant, and just the whole extreme of being on a traveling vacation, using all your income, not being able to get a job because I was pregnant when I came back, but then also being forced to go back to work a lot earlier than I would have ever loved to. Full time, mind you. Like I didn't have the option. Part-time wasn't an option in my field. It was either you're fully in or you're out. And just having the flexibility to make that choice. It's really important to have a look at different avenues to bring in income. And it may not necessarily mean that you want the flexibility now, but you're definitely going to want it at some stage in life. It could even be just to fund your holiday fund or the extra lifestyle goals that you set for yourself or your kids.
I think we're in a time at the moment where security is questionable.
Yes.
People are losing their jobs, or they're being laid off, or they're being told to take 2 months off without pay because of what's happening in the world at the moment. Like borders are being closed, airlines are losing millions, like the stock market lost something like 50 billion in the last 30 days. Like there's so much going on in the world right now, and I think people are actually scared about what could potentially happen. And I believe now more than ever is probably a really good time to be really smart about what we're doing with our money, how we're saving it, where we're placing it and investing it. What would be your advice for people who maybe have lost their job or their job isn't looking safe, or should they really be looking at other ways that they can have their money make them money?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always, the earlier you start, the much better you'll be, and the less stressful and the least amount of risk that you'll be needing to take. So the sooner the better. I think primarily, particularly with what we're seeing at the moment with the coronavirus, it's absolutely crazy. I was only talking to one of my girlfriends who's in Denmark at the moment, and they've literally shut down Denmark. And she said you can still walk around in the streets and everything, but soon they're basically going to say no eating out, no grocery stores, everything's going to stop. So what happens to the people that work in the grocery stores? Like, who's going to take that financial responsibility? Because the grocery stores aren't getting the income. How are they supposed to support the people who are on these salaries to pay them their income streams? Yeah. Who takes the responsibility? So it's always, I recommend having a look at different alternatives that can kind of step in and take at least paying your cost of living, even just jotting down your budget, and getting to understand what your actual cost of living is before anything else important. And it might even be as little as $50 a week that you're putting aside for an emergency, but it's $50 that may have exposure to the market that over time could be building something that could support you enough and be pulling down enough for you to maybe pay for the 2 months off work that you're unable to do.
It's because, I don't know if it's true, but I read somewhere that in Australia and USA is the same. Like most people in the population are only 1 or 2 paychecks ahead. So if something was to happen and they were to be out of work, they've only got money in savings for them for 2 weeks. Like
that's scary,
isn't that? And that's reality of what most families are facing right now. So I'm like, a side hustle doesn't necessarily have to be sexy either. Sometimes it's a necessity.
Yeah.
You need to have a second income stream because no one plans for divorce, no one plans for sickness, no one plans for death, no one plans for disability. But that shit happens. And if you're trading your time for money, when you stop working, how do you make money? Investing.
Yeah, it's the only way. I mean, you've only got 24 hours in a day. You're still going to need to sleep. You can't just get another second job and a third job. It doesn't work like that.
Well, I read somewhere the other day that there are 3 ways to make money, and that's to trade your time for money, or there is investments, or there is duplicating your time, which is creating a residual income. And I love that that's it. Like, they're the 3 ways. And now more than ever is a really smart time to educate ourselves on those 3 ways and start opening up to options and things like that. Like the fact that people don't have savings for what might come in the next few months, like that's really sad. And I think it's up to us to really educate people on how they can get themselves out of a pretty scary situation potentially.
Yeah, you say that people only have, like the studies, maybe 2 paychecks. I can hand on heart say the majority of the clients that come in don't even have that.
Isn't that
and
scary?
the debt I can't even understand the level of debt. And with these increased options around like your Afterpay and your ZipPay,
Oh my God.
it's just creating a bigger issue.
People just keep paying with money they don't have.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely out of control. And we really do need to help educate people on just how important looking at other options really are. And if you're starting early, you probably won't even notice that you're doing it.
And it's, and like just on the other side, being a devil's advocate, or even just kind of showing or letting you guys listen to another side of a story. Like if you're an employee though at the moment, like it's even hard for bosses. Like it's funny because my partner has a traditional business, and what's happening in the market right now is affecting big businesses, and they don't want to, but they've got to lay people off. Like they don't have the money coming in, so Dan's having to let people go at the moment, and it breaks his heart. And you think you're not secure in a job. And it's not because they don't want you there. It's because the market, it influences everything right now. So,
yeah. And going back to Afterpay, actually, that's something I really want to bring up, because I feel like Afterpay and ZipPay and all those like really cool things that's like buy now, pay later, like really targeting vulnerable people who,
especially women, because we buy stuff
everywhere, absolutely everywhere.
In a society where we're such consumers and we are such all about short-term gratification, like I want it now, I don't want to save for it and like really work for it, I want it now. Like I know so many people that I could name right now that are just relying on Afterpay or programs like that, and they're not understanding that yes, it's interest-free, quote unquote, but where they're actually making their money is in the fees. It's in when you default a payment, and you are their perfect customer, pretty much. So I hate it when I see people really jump onto Afterpay and things like that, because I'm all about like I don't have a credit card.
Yep.
I've chopped mine up years ago. Whenever I travel or whenever I buy something, it is cold hard cash, and I really want to empower women to have that mentality so that they're not in that debt that I'm sure you see a lot of.
I see some scary figures, and figures that I today still go, I nearly need a minute and just walk out.
It's scary.
Oh, it's horrible, and it doesn't get any better. Once you're in a debt position, who's going to come in? The next step is you let it go for months, maybe 12 months, and then it's okay. Well, the real hard decision is, do we file for bankruptcy? Like, well, and then that's something that's going to follow you around for years after. And then in terms of wealth and accumulation, if you get laid off in that process, and it's just a giant snowball.
What's the consequences of bankruptcy for those who may not know?
Yeah, so basically, no financing. No, that's just gone. Sometimes you can't even leave the country. The loss of your possessions, repossession, all of that kind of thing. And then you might not necessarily people just think you don't have to pay the money back. They potentially can, and they can come after your super. So, it's not something.
It's not like just an easy way out, like, I'll just file for bankruptcy and then this problem will be disappeared.
It'll be a smell that will follow you forever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I love that we've called the elephant out in the room. The coronavirus and what's happening in the market right now is big. Everyone's feeling the pressure of that and the insecurity of that and the uncertainty of that. But if we were to flip it on its head and talk about some of the positives that are happening right now, like mortgage rates have never been this low ever. Hey, so it's a good opportunity. If you've got a mortgage, like pay. Like obviously, guys, this isn't personalized advice. There is a disclaimer in this, so make sure you talk to somebody about this. But if we look at the perks and in the opportunity that is here right now, like mortgage rates have never been this low. So if you've got cash and you can pay off debt, it's a good time to do it. We're talking even before about like shares. Like shares have gone down. Like they're probably going to go down a lot more before they go up. But there's an opportunity to invest and make money over the next 5, 10, 20 years. But even like there's never been more opportunities and options for side hustles and income streams online too. Like there is, as much as there is a lot of uncertainty right now, there's a lot of opportunity as well. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And we're so lucky. We've got phones that connect to everything and everyone. There is so much opportunity for us to do anything. And it's not about just connecting to people that you walk past in the street now. It could be somebody in a completely different country. So suddenly your little market has just exploded, and we could be in quarantine in our own homes, and we could be exploring options to look at ways to continue to bring another income. It might not be that you're driving an Uber or delivering Uber Eats or something like that, but there's definitely options. Spend the time, go through your wardrobe, offload some of those old clothes that you don't need anymore.
Keep an eye on our page too, because we're going to have a really cool ebook we're going to share with you ladies over the next week on how you can create a side hustle as well. Perfect. We've been excited to share that. Yeah, it's crazy, but exciting. Very exciting.
I'm excited. If I can be really transparent, I was in a really bad financial position 10 years ago, and I've shared this on the podcast before. Like, I didn't have any education around how a credit card worked, and so I got one, and it started off as being like a little $1,000 max, and then every couple of months, like, I'd get an increase, and I'd be like, yes, I qualified for this, and I ended up in a $12,000 credit card debt where I was in a position I couldn't pay anything other than the minimum.
Yep.
And that went on for years, and it was like this big, ugly cloud over my head that just put this subconscious stress on me, even though I was kind of oblivious and naive to the position I put myself in.
Yep.
I was still a little bit stressed about it, because I was like, I've got 12 grand and I spent it on dumb things like petrol and the movies, and I think I went to Europe for my 21st birthday and took that credit card with me, and like just bought Nutella crepes in Paris, like just really dumb stuff. And I think now more than ever, I think the journey of learning how to pay that off and save, and my financial coaches have always taught me, like, have 3 months worth of savings and do not touch it, and anything over 3 months worth of savings, invest. And so I was brought in the last 5 years of my life, like, got to have savings, got to have 3 months worth. If anything happens, not even with the economic crisis or anything like that, like if I injure myself or something happens where I'm not able to work, you want to have that security there. And so I think what I'm trying to say is, it's such a nice feeling coming into a time like now and not being in the position I was in 10 years ago. And I hope that people can be inspired by this podcast to go, right, enough's enough. Like, if you're the person with the credit card debt, like, let's get that fixed up. If maybe you have savings and you're like, okay, I should be smart about this, I should make me money, like, go and talk to a financial advisor, and let's like talk about what options you have. I really hope this inspires people to just get out of that position where most of us find ourselves in.
And you know what? Everyone does. Everyone has that at least one hard financial expensive lesson that you start off with, and it's kind of like you turn 18. Oh, yes, I would really love to go do that Europe trip after school.
Yeah.
I've only been working casually, been lucky to maybe earn $5,000 a year, going through the party scene, also trying to study maybe. When you're young, you honestly just have no understanding, and parents don't spend a lot of time teaching their kids either, because they haven't been provided that education. So the spiral doesn't end, because it just follows generation after generation after generation, and no one's there stopping it.
Yeah.
But now people have a tribe where you can come talk to women, and I love it. Like, we're in a stage of life where we are lucky and women want to know. Women are being empowered. It's not silly. If you don't know it, you don't know much about wealth creation. It's cool. You don't sound like silly to us. We knew nothing. So connect. I love that we connected online. There's podcasts, like, talk about it, ask questions. It's not silly. The only silly question is the one you don't ask. And I think women, we really can be empowered to live a life that you love, and to have opportunities and security. You really can have it all.
Yeah. Where can people find you if they want to ask you questions, or just get in touch with you?
Yes, so I have my Instagram. You can find me at memm.page, PAGEFP. and or Lumaire, LUMAIRE.co, and my website, which my amazing partner just built for me in the last couple of weeks, is Lumaire.co, and just plug in a couple of questions there. They come to me directly, and I'm always happy to have a chat, even over a coffee if you need a bit of a debrief, which lots of people just need a little bit of a shove.
Yeah, well, we'll put all those links in our show notes so people can connect with you.
That'll be great.
That was fun. How do you feel? You did it.
Well, I can talk too much, but that's cool. Thanks, girls. Bloody Afterpay.
Wow, what an amazing episode. I hope you're feeling inspired after that conversation and empowered to make some changes and choices in your life. Now, don't forget to let us know if you loved this episode. Please give us a 5-star review. It really helps us know that we're on track with serving you guys, and also majorly supports our channel. And you may even be in the running to be the shout out of the week. Every week on Instagram, we share one of our reviews with our network. So please be sure to leave your Instagram handle or your website in your review so we can share you with our amazing community. If you head over to the link in our bio on Instagram at Babes Talking Business, you can get access to so many of our goodies, including the link to our bib shop. It's a crazy cute online merchandise shop that donates 100% of profits to a non-for-profit charity every month. So head over and check out who we're donating to this month and get yourself something super cute to wear. You can also find in our Instagram bio our books. You can get your hands on Life Above Zero by Lauren Kerr or The 4-Year Career with Shani Thompson. Both super easy reads and incredible books to help you expand and evolve in even deeper ways. Now, don't forget to head over to the show notes. You can check out any of the links or the books or the references we mentioned in this episode. And before we go, we just want to say thanks so much for being here, for committing to being the best version of you, and for showing up for you today. You are freaking amazing. Now, if you think that there is someone in your life that could really benefit from this episode, while you're feeling super inspired, please hit the share button and send them this episode right now. And the reason we're asking you to share the love is because you get what you give. And the more that you give and inspire, the more you get in return. Head over to www.babestalkingbusiness.com to check out all of our other podcasts. And we just want to say we are sending you so much love, and we hope to see you soon. That's what I feel in my heart.